Over the past week, I was actually on a vacation. Finally, if you can believe it. And while I was mostly successful in unplugging while out of the office, I couldn't help but read up on one piece of news because of how much consternation it was stirring up online. And that was this article that saw AMD's Donnie Woligrowski openly state that Zen 5 Standard would not notably, or possibly at all, beat Zen 4 X3D in overall gaming performance, which I don't actually understand why this was considered news, that part of the article for most people. The same thing happened with Zen 4 versus Zen 3 X3D. They traded blows in gaming performance. And I mean, if we ignore that and just do the math ourselves, we can see that Zen 5 has the same max boost clocks as Zen 4, but of course, it has 16% higher IPC. But then the 7800 X3D that brought around a 20% performance uplift over the 7700X. So, yeah, guys, 20% is more than 16%. I don't know who was expecting anything different than the outcome Donnie said. Although, I will say this. Based on what AMD engineers told me a couple weeks ago that was leaked to you all in a video, I could see Zen 5 super long term aging a bit better than Zen 4 X3D, especially in higher core count models where more than 8 cores are leveraged heavily in the future. And also, just in general, down to the architectural level, there are some things that if developers really optimize for Zen 5, I could see it pulling ahead of Zen 4 X3D in general. But that's long term. Short term, what Donnie said shouldn't have surprised anybody. Actually, on that video I just brought up that I mentioned the AMD engineers in, I didn't just talk about IPC and long term performance in that video. I also talked about Zen 5 X3D coming out around a quarter or so after Zen 5 Standard. And today, I have even more details about when Zen 5 X3D is launching, new details about enhancements AMD is putting in to Zen 5 X3D that should make it much more exciting than I think a lot of people are expecting. And most excitingly, I also have pricing for the initial SKUs launching in the Zen 5 lineup next month. And all of this put together, aggressive pricing, more enhancements to X3D, and X3D coming out sooner than it did last generation. I think if you add it all up, AMD really is actually still sandbagging how competitive they're going to be against Arrow Lake, and I want to explain why I think that, but first, an ad from a sponsor. This piece of content is brought to you by the Ugreen Nexode X 160 watt charger. This charger adopts advanced chip solutions and electronic stacking technology to make it smaller, lighter, and more powerful than your typical charger, like this old one that I have right here. It's about the same size as this one, yet this thing is limited to about 17 watts per the best USB-A ports on it, and I think around 30 watts total of output, but not the Nexode X. This thing right here has 4 ports, 3 of them USB-C and 1 of them USB-A that can charge up to 140 watts from a single port. That means it can charge a MacBook Pro 16-inch to 50% in just 27 minutes, and it can put out 160 watts total, being able to charge many different products simultaneously. Like, literally, it can charge quickly my 65-watt laptop, rapidly charge a Samsung smartphone with 45-watt output, quick charge my smartwatch, and even charge some earbuds all at the same time. All of those things, a laptop, earbuds, a high-end smartphone, and a smartwatch, all of those things are either fully powered and able to game or rapidly charging at their fastest rate, all at the same time just with this. And this makes it perfect for use as a catch-all compact travel charger. The only thing you need to throw in your bag while you're moving around to charge everything on the go. It's 21% smaller than the original 140-watt USB-C charger. And so if you're interested, click on the links and follow the directions below to get the best deal on this product right now. Remember that even clicking on those links below helps the channel a ton. And of course, purchasing it and following those directions below helps even more. So support Moore's Law is Dead by checking out the Ugreen Nexode X 160-watt charger today. All right, now before I get to the juicy information, I do want to make a few things clear first. First of all, technically, I can't promise you what final pricing will be, even if I know what AMD has told distributors to prepare for in the back end. You see, for example, if you look at past pricing leaks from me, many of them involving some of the same people I consulted for today's video, by the way, you can see that the 600 series motherboard pricing leak was dead on. The RX 6600 MSRP leak was also dead on, and the RTX Super pricing leak, again, dead on. But for example, a time I was at least a little wrong, arguably, My Raptor Lake pricing leak, it was slightly off for a couple of the SKUs, and that's because I saw what the pricing was before markup and before adding tax, and I said, based on previous generations, this is how much the final markup should get to, and then the MSRP should be around here. And I assumed that Intel would not want to lose money on those CPUs. But I guess they were willing to, and they were also willing to make retailers they were working with sell them at cost. And that's why I was a little off in that leak. And in fact, earnings that came out after that video showed that Intel indeed lost margins and a bunch of money because they were selling things basically at cost that quarter. So, yeah, at the end of the day, all I can promise you is that right now, AMD is listing pre markup, pre tax pricing for the initial Zen 5 SKUs that is below what Zen 4s were listed at in 2022. And then if I extrapolate that, what the pre markup pricing is to what the final MSRP became, I can give you a good estimate of what the final MSRP is roughly going to be, unless AMD decided to lose money or to gouge really hard. But, anyways, let's stop beating around the bush. Let's put this leak on screen here and then just start working through this leak point by point. With the first point, of course, being what I've been mostly talking about here, the distributors have pre-market pricing loaded into their systems for Zen 5 that, if extrapolated based on how final pricing resulted from pre-market pricing last gen, the 16-core 9950X should be priced between $599 and $649, a fairly substantial price cut over what Zen 4, the 7950X launched at, which was, of course, $699. Now, the 9900X 12 core, the 12 cores for AMD's lineups over the past 4 years, I feel like these are ones that end up getting the most price cuts over time because most people either want all 32 threads or they want 8 cores with Vcache. And so it doesn't surprise me that based on what I'm seeing, AMD is going to do the most aggressive price cut percentage wise with the 12 core, and that would put it at 449 to 499. And then the 9700X should be priced between 329 to 379, which really doesn't sound crazy to me at all. And then the 9600X, it could still be priced at 299 based on what I'm seeing, but I think it's very likely it's in the middle of the range of 249 to 299. No, I'm not done yet. Also, here the second point. Multiple AMD sources have communicated to me over the past week that Zen 5 X3D may have less limitations on boost clocks and have overclocking support. However, there were issues in controlling thermals with Zen 5 X3D at high clocks, at least according to someone who helped work on this a bit ago. And so I cannot 100% confirm this will happen just yet, but based on Donnie's recent statements, I really think this is what he's hinting at, and I can tell you 100% this was an initiative for Zen 5 X3D as long ago as I think over a year ago. There were teams working to see if they could get higher boost clocks than what they've been able to achieve relatively with previous gens, and that they did want to offer some form of real overclocking support for these products finally. So I do think this is very, very likely. Now, point number three, I've also been told that the 9950 X3D could have two X3D CCDs. Although I do have to note that this one really is a rumor that's being whispered between AMD partners after speaking with people who work at AMD. So there's a bit of a secondhand whisper that I'm communicating to you all, meaning that I have not been able to entirely confirm with someone who is actually at AMD that the green light was given to give two Vcache CCDs to the top 16 core 9950 X3D. I only know that people who work with AMD are hearing that this might be happening. So it's a little more of a whisper than me just directly doubling down on it. But I do think it is worth mentioning because I think it would be a huge deal if AMD decided to give all of the cores in the top 16 core Vcache. And I also think that the fact that it should be able to boost higher with Vcache with Zen 5 suggests to me that there is less of a reason to try to have a balanced approach of some cores without Vcache boosting higher and some cores with Vcache. If you can get Zen 5 X3D to boost almost as high as Zen 5 standard, why not use all Vcache? Especially because it would make it the most efficient flagship AMD's ever launched. Vcache does make it more efficient. And also, it would mean that there's just less headaches and worries about an app using the wrong core, like using a Vcache core and it should use a boosting core, or a boosting core and should use a Vcache core. It really simplifies the support on the software side for this product. And I also just think it would be more popular. Like I've heard plenty of retailers I talk to say that they are forced to discount the 7950 X3D more than they thought they would need to because when they ask customers checking out with either a 7950X or 7800X 3D, why don't they get the one that is 16 cores with a Vcache CCD? People just openly state, I don't want to deal with the headaches of an Xbox game bar or worrying if the correct cores are being used in my app. Either I want Vcache or I want 16 threads boosting high. I would get the 16 core with Vcache if it was all Vcache, but it isn't. And so I think AMD, from a marketing perspective, might know that it's just worth doing it. And in fact, I actually have heard that adding Vcache to a CCD adds like maybe $20 or so. And so if it adds about $20 or I mean, even if it had 30 or something or $40, you have to imagine you'll be able to charge at least that much more. Like people I've asked behind the scenes, would you rather pay an extra $100 to have one Vcache CCD or an extra $200 to have all Vcache? Every single person I've asked said, give me all the Vcache. And again, if AMD has managed to make Zen 5 X3D not lose as much clock speed versus the standard model this generation, then I don't know why you wouldn't use all Vcache because you don't really need to worry about boosting higher. It is already boosting higher this time around, even with Vcache. But, anyways, moving on to the final point here. I should make it clear that as of a day ago, no retailer I spoke to had final pricing yet for Zen 5. But I am told by multiple contacts I have at multiple large retailers, both online and brick and mortar stores, that AMD representatives are openly telling everyone who asks when they ask about Zen 5 pricing that it will be last gen or lower for Zen 5. And that tells you right there that even if AMD gets greedy, that they won't be charging more than last generation. At least that much I can completely confirm. And by the way, for those that doubt that AMD can afford to charge less for Zen 5 than they did at Zen 4's launch, I really think you should read up online. Current estimates for Zen 5 CCDs point to them having a smaller die size, meaning less cost, than the CCDs used with Zen 4. And additionally, TSMC has cut costs recently on wafers. So cheaper wafer costs, at least for the IO die, smaller die sizes for 4 nanometer, which is still a 5 nanometer family node. It's not crazy at all to think that AMD will be able to charge a bit less for each SKU this generation at launch than they did last generation. And they're pretty much going to have to with how quickly they're launching X3D after the base models. Yep, if I put this quote on screen here, one of my best sources, a partner of AMD, tells me that they were just told that all of these details I'm talking about, like X3D release dates, special features of Zen 5 that haven't been revealed yet, and the pricing, should all come out in some sort of tech day that AMD is going to conduct in the coming weeks. But that at a minimum, right now, this person is getting hints from their partners at AMD that X3D is definitely coming by quarter four or even quarter three of this year. And so when you add this all up, Zen 5 being priced more aggressively than Zen 4 was, Zen 5 X3D having added enhancements that Zen 4 X3D did not have, and then also X3D launching really close to the standard model, I think if you put it all together, AMD is sandbagging overall here, as usual, with what they have announced so far. I mean, who knows? Maybe AMD will announce final IPC that is higher than what they've announced so far. They've certainly done that before, but even without doing that, I just think adding all of that up together, AMD is in a much more competitive position with Zen 5 versus Arrow Lake in the second half of this year than they're letting on so far. And to be honest, I'm not really sure how Intel will compete with what I've just leaked to you all today if Arrow Lake really is just getting only a 14% IPC uplift. I mean, that would mean that 14% versus AMD getting 16% with Zen 5 over Zen 4. AMD is making up some lost ground here and may tie or even exceed single threading of Arrow Lake before Vcache enters the chat. And then once Vcache does enter the chat, it sounds like we'll have even more enhancements than last generation that can make Zen 5 X3D end up a solid 10, 20, or who knows, 30% faster than Arrow Lake in gaming once all is said and done. And if you're wondering, by the way, yeah, motherboard manufacturers that I've spoken with this week, because I did ask them directly what they are expecting, a couple of them told me that they're not sure that Intel has any answer to remain competitive with Zen 5 X3D in gaming. Although some of them, I guess, think Arrow Lake could win in multi-threading or at least be competitive. We'll have to see there. But really, the point I'm trying to make here is that if Arrow Lake isn't also sandbagging, like it seems AMD clearly is, I don't know. A lot of people behind the scenes think that if they're not sandbagging performance with Lion Cove, AMD's just going to conquer the rest of the high end this generation in desktop and a lot of laptop, and then Qualcomm's going to eat away at the Pentium to i5 tier laptop space against Intel as well. And I just don't know how Intel survives that. Although I do want to be clear that I do actually think Intel could be sandbagging a bit here. Technically, if you look at it, for Lion Cove, they've only shown off the Lunar Lake Lion Cove IPC, and Arrow Lake is still a quarter after that. And I genuinely think it's possible that Intel could have some tricks up its sleeve for how the Arrow Lake variant of Lion Cove performs versus Lunar Lake. And actually, on that note, I want to just close the video by making one point very clear. I need to remind you all that we do not know yet for sure who is going to win between Zen 5 and Lunar Lake plus Arrow Lake at the end of this year until we get all of the information from both companies. After all, look at what I am disclosing to you today. It entirely changes the picture. X3D coming out sooner than expected. X3D getting extra enhancements over Zen 4. More aggressive pricing than I think a lot of people are expecting. That entirely changes how you would characterize the competitiveness of Zen 5, and we still have over a month before that comes out. There could be even more surprises announced by AMD, but also by Intel. For example, what if Zen 5 standard ends up 5% slower in single threading than expected? What if that IPC average AMD put out was heavily cherry picked to get to 16%? Or another example, what if Intel's instability issues keep getting worse to the point that AMD goes, we don't need to cut prices. We can charge whatever we want. No one's going to buy Intel. Anyways, that could happen. Or what if Arrow Lake isn't actually stronger with Lion Cove than we're expecting? What if they're worse? I mean, if you look at that Lunar Lake Lion Cove IPC slide, you can see that at higher power limits, it says it has only 10% higher performance than Raptor Lake. What if, because Arrow Lake is meant for desktop, it's only a 10% boost in single threading over Raptor Lake? That would massively change its ability to compete at all with Zen 5. And of course, what if Arrow Lake or Zen 5 are way more or less efficient than expected? I've heard that Arrow Lake should be a lot more focused on reasonable TDPs than what Raptor Lake Refresh had, but we're also seeing hints that Zen 5 really may be a massive uplift in efficiency over Zen 4. And actually, speaking of efficiency, to give a specific example from the past, don't forget that Raptor Lake in mid 2022 was honestly impressing me a ton with its on paper performance gains that were at the upper limits of what people at Intel told me it would achieve. And so, leading up to the Raptor Lake launch in 2022, I was super optimistic about it. But when review day came around, its power consumption and then absurdly expensive cooling requirements, and additionally now I guess its reliability problems, have completely neutered any on paper benefits that I saw it really having over Zen 4 to the point I didn't see it as really worth it at all. Unknown factors can change who wins overall, and we just don't know everything yet. What we have learned today is that despite Zen 5 initially not looking like a bigger uplift than Zen 4 was, I am hearing that the pricing, the X3D enhancements, and the cadence for the X3D release could actually make it more exciting for desktop builders this fall than Zen 4 was, but that doesn't mean that we do know it will win for sure against Intel just yet. We just know that if Intel isn't sandbagging with Arrow Lake, then AMD probably is going to win. And that is going to do it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did enjoy it, please like the video. Please share it. Sharing helps so much. And please comment below about your thoughts about what is being leaked by this video today. I would love to hear them. But of course, you could tell me much more if you support Moore's Law is Dead on Patreon. All tiers get access to the Discord where you can discuss this video with me and thousands of other patrons right now. And then you'll also get access, no matter what tier you choose, to the exclusive set of content, Die Shrink. There are hundreds of videos out there right now that you can listen or watch at your leisure that never have any ads, and they're just tailored for what the biggest fans want us to talk about. And, higher tiers also get ad-free early versions of Broken Silicon. All tiers get the ability to ask guests question. I will be having High Yield on again very soon to talk about all the developments from Computex. So if you join the tier at the bottom, you can still ask High Yield questions for the next Broken Silicon episode that comes after the news one. And yeah, I guess though, no matter what, if you made it this far to the end of the video, thank you for watching.